There is no alarm. There is no boss. There is no place you are supposed to be. You open your eyes because your body is finished sleeping, and for the first time all night, the fire has burned low. You sit up, you stretch, and then you ask yourself a question so ordinary that it would have shaped almost every morning a human being ever woke into. What do I want to do today? For you, that question is a fantasy. You answer to a calendar. But for roughly 300,000 years, that question was simply Tuesday. Nobody around you had a job. Nobody had ever heard of one. There was no wage, no shift, no manager, no career, no Sunday night dread. And yet somehow these people filled their days completely. So what on earth did they actually do? Start with the number that should make you uneasy. Across a modern working life, the common estimate is that you will spend around 90,000 hours at work, roughly a third of every waking hour you will ever have, handed to a job. We treat that as simply the price of being alive. But it isn't ancient. It is brand new. For more than 99% of the human story, the thing you organize your entire existence around did not exist at all. We know this is not a romantic guess, because in the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Borchet-Lee decided to actually count. He lived with the Jew/Huanzi of the Kalahari, one of the last peoples on Earth still living, largely by hunting and gathering, and instead of admiring them, he ran a stopwatch. He weighed the food. He logged the hours. And in 1968, he reported something that quietly detonated a century of assumptions. The adults were spending only about 12 to 19 hours a week getting food. Call it 15. Not a day. A week. Sit with that. The rest of their time, the overwhelming majority of it, was simply theirs. And here is the part that turns a curiosity into a pattern. This was not one lucky tribe in one gentle valley. Look at the Hadza in Tanzania, studied for decades by Frank Marlowe, and you find the same story. The anthropologist James Woodburn estimated they spent, on average across the year, less than 2 hours a day actually acquiring food. The Hadza were so unbothered that the researcher Kristen Hawkes openly puzzled over why the men spent so many hours sitting in camp, often just dozing. Different continent, different animals, different language. Same answer. Survival for a healthy forager was a part-time commitment. So who told you life was a desperate scramble? It was a guess. For generations we assumed our ancestors lived one bad day from starvation, hollow-cheeked and exhausted. The anthropologist Marshall Salins flipped that on its head with a phrase that still stings. He called these people the original affluent society. Affluent not because they had much, but because they wanted little and got it easily and were left with the one resource we now consider the rarest of all, time. But maybe you are still resisting. These are living people, you think. How do we know the ancient ones lived the same way? Fair. So let's stop asking the living and start asking the dead. When you lay the skeletons of late hunter-gatherers beside the skeletons of the first farmers, the bones tell a story no one can spin. The anthropologist Amanda Mummett led a sweeping review of these remains, and the verdict was brutal. As people took up farming, they got shorter by something like 4 centimeters on average. Their teeth, suddenly soaked in soft grain and sugar, rotted in their jaws. Their bodies carried the marks of repetitive labor and nutritional disease that the foragers before them simply did not have. The farmers were not the upgrade. The foragers were taller, sounder, with cleaner teeth and fewer worn joints. Their skeletons whisper the same thing the stopwatch shouted. They were working less, not more. Which leaves a strange and beautiful problem. If survival only took 15 hours, what filled the other 100? And here the ground itself answers, because our ancestors left behind something that has no business existing in a life of constant struggle. They left art. In December of 1994, a man named Jean-Marie Chauvet squeezed through a gap in a cliff in southern France and lifted his lamp into a chamber no human had entered in tens of thousands of years. The walls were alive, lions, rhinos, horses, charging across the rock with shading, with perspective, with motion. These paintings are around 36,000 years old. They are not the clumsy scratchings of brutes. Someone went deep into the cold dark by firelight and spent hours, maybe days, making a wall beautiful. Not for food, not for shelter, for something inside them that needed to be let out. And it goes back far further than France. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologist Christopher Henshelwood found tiny sea snail shells, each one deliberately pierced to be strung together. Beads, jewelry, about 75,000 years old. Someone selected each shell and worked a hole through it with stone, for no reason except to be adorned, to be seen, to feel beautiful. Then there is the sound. In a German cave called Hohle Fels, archaeologist Nicholas Conrad uncovered a flute carved from a vulture's wing bone, around 40,000 years old, with 5 precisely spaced finger holes. Whoever made it understood pitch and melody. They sat in a cold cave at the edge of an ice age and built an instrument to make music, not a weapon, a song. Do you see what these objects really are? They are receipts for free time. You do not drill shells and tune flutes if every hour is a fight to stay alive. These are the fingerprints of people who chose to make something rather than nothing. So let's rebuild one of their days, hour by hour. You wake near dawn to embers. Breakfast is yesterday's leftovers, eaten slowly, surrounded by people, full of talk no one is required to have. Mid-morning, maybe a small group leaves to hunt or gather, but maybe not, because there is still food from 2 days ago. If they hunt, forget the movies. Our ancestors were not the fastest animals on the plain. They were the most relentless. Biologists Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman argued our bodies were sculpted for endurance. You jog under a noon sun that forces furred animals into shade. So you do not outrun the antelope. You follow it at a steady trot until its body overheats and it simply cannot run anymore. Then you carry it home, everyone eats, and by early afternoon, the day's work is finished. And what comes next is the part your modern mind cannot quite hold. Nothing and everything. You rest in the shade. You talk. You play with the children. You pick through someone's hair, and they pick through yours. Long grooming sessions that are the glue keeping you alive. Because in a world with no money and no contracts, the only thing standing between you and starvation is whether people like you. Then the sun goes down, and the day changes character. Polly Wiesner spent decades recording conversations of the Zhu Huanzi. By day, talk was ordinary, even grumpy. Only about 6% of daytime talk was storytelling, the rest logistics and gossip. But at night, around the fire, 81% of conversation became stories. Tales of relatives, ancestors, spirits, the way the world began. Wiesner argued this firelit hour is where culture itself was forged. Even sleep was not what yours is. Historian Roger Ekirch dug through old records and uncovered a forgotten pattern, confirmed in the lab by sleep scientist Thomas Ware. Without artificial light, people slept in 2 blocks, with a peaceful island of wakefulness in between. That 2 a.m. wakefulness you call insomnia may simply be an ancient rhythm trying to come home. So here is the whole day. 4 to 6 hours getting food or making tools. 6 hours of pure human company, grooming, playing, telling stories. 8 hours of sleep, broken gently in 2. And threaded through all of it. Time to sit, time to watch the clouds, time to exist without justifying your existence by what you produced. Then, about 10,000 years ago, it ended. Not with a war, with a seed. Farming let you feed more people, and more people needed more food, until there were too many mouths to ever go back. You were locked in. The specialists arrived, then soldiers, then priests, then rulers, and finally the idea that your time could belong to someone else in exchange for staying alive. We built cities on it, we built jobs on it, we built you on it. So look again at that life. Your ancestors woke when they were done sleeping. They worked until food was secured, and then they were free, already, every morning. They did not chase some distant retirement where they might finally rest and create and simply be. They were already living inside the life you are working yourself ragged to one day afford. We are not a different species from them. We carry the same bodies, the same need for company, the same hands that ache to make something beautiful. We just live so far from the way humans lived for 99% of our time on Earth that we might as well be strangers to ourselves. We traded freedom for security, stories for schedules, and time, the one thing they had in abundance, for a number we can never quite catch. There is no alarm. There is no boss. There is no place you are supposed to be. For almost the entire human story, that was not a fantasy. That was Tuesday. And somewhere underneath the job and the calendar, a much older version of you still wakes in the dark and asks the only question that ever really mattered. What do I want to do today?